Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jadesola. I know it's been a while since I last dropped a video, but I will tell you about what I've been working on and the reason why I've not dropped a video in a while later in this video. So today we're going to be talking about buying a property outside the area you live in. If you're new to my channel, I have been documenting my journey trying to buy a property in Liverpool while I live in London. And a lot of people have been asking me how I'm able to do that, why I'm even doing that in the first place, and how they can take advantage of the opportunity and one of the things that they should look out for. I know that a lot of people obviously are afraid when they have to do an investment outside of the area that they're used to or that they know. And people often wonder, how can you successfully do an investment in an area where you have no clue? And a lot of the fear would normally hold people back. And I know that a lot of people have questions. So the approach I'm going to take with this video is to answer some of the top questions that people have been asking me with regards to buying a property outside of the area that I live in. And the first question is, why did I choose to buy in a location outside of where I live in? For me, it was a case of the fact that I always knew that I wanted to buy an investment property first and not a residential home that I was going to be living in for so many reasons. One, I'm a new immigrant in the UK. I love living in London. I am not ready to move outside London. I also am aware that I currently cannot afford to buy a property in London. So buying a residential property was not really at the forefront of my mind. And if I wanted to buy an investment property as well, obviously because, buying an investment property would require a higher percentage deposit than if I were buying a residential property. So I thought of how much I could afford as a 25% deposit. And when I came up with a number, obviously London was not the place. And I see that sometimes a lot of people don't take advantage of opportunities because the opportunity is not in close proximity to where they live or where they are or where they're familiar with. And I, on the other hand, obviously started to do a lot of research about areas where I could afford, but ultimately areas where I would be able to do a lot of the strategies of property investment that I was thinking in my mind. So I knew that I could potentially do the vanilla buy-to-let, where I could buy a property and just rent it out to a single family or tenant, or I could decide to go the route of serviced accommodation, so doing things like Airbnb. Alternatively, I could do HMO and rent out my property room by room to students or professionals. So when I was doing my research, obviously Northeast was coming to mind a lot. And in terms of affordability, it was also within a price range that I could afford. And the third thing for me was the fact that it was an area that I felt could work with all the strategies that I had in mind. So those are some of the reasons why I chose to invest outside of the area that I live in, to take advantage of, getting onto the property ladder, to still achieve the same aim that I want, but ultimately also just understanding and doing research about the area in itself. And the second question people have been asking me is, so how do you then go about finding a suitable property in an area that you don't live in? How do you go for viewings? How do you even know it's the right property to buy? So this is a very interesting question for me because back when I decided that I had enough money to invest based on the price range and the budget that I had in mind, I called a few estate agents, and immediately it was clear to me that, hey, maybe I'm not cut out for this sort of work, because all the estate agents I called, even though they were ready to book me for a viewing, they were going to book me in for a viewing during the week. And obviously I have a 9 to 5 and I'm like, how do I go to this area, travel all the way down to Liverpool to go and view a property during the week? It was going to be impossible. And then what if I go and then I don't like the property and then I come back and I have to make the journey again and just the back and forth. And what I did was to engage the service of someone who was going to take a lot of those sort of stress off of me. And it was meant to be hands-free. They were going to go for viewings for me. They were also going to connect me with a lot of their partners, so their mortgage brokers, everything, right? And the only time I was meant to travel to Liverpool was when the property was actually ready for me to put tenants in. So it was just supposed to be like a tick box exercise for me to just go and see my investment before tenants start to move in. And unfortunately, this didn't work out. And it's not necessarily a bad idea to engage somebody, right? What happened with me was that I engaged someone that, one, their team couldn't handle my situation because, like I said earlier, it was a total package where they were also going to get me financing and help me with their mortgage broker to get me a mortgage. Obviously, I didn't have the full cash to buy a property, so I was going to need a mortgage. And their mortgage broker just couldn't deal with my situation where I was a first-time buyer, first-time landlord. I was on a visa in the UK. I was also trying to buy a property in my limited liability company. So they just couldn't handle my situation and it dragged on for months. If it were to just be that, or maybe they were just sourcing the property for me, it probably would have been less of a hassle, to be honest. And what ended up happening was the fact that, trust was obviously broken down because they overpromised what they could do and then they underdelivered in my situation. So it's not a bad thing to use a property sourcer to help you to just relieve you of some of the stress of going back and forth in an area where you're not familiar with, as long as they're capable of doing the work. And if you've been following my channel, you would know that I ended up solving my own problem myself. I ended up getting my own mortgage broker who is fantastic, who is very conversant with people in my situation. And I also ended up going to Liverpool to view properties. It took me 2 trips over, I would say 8 days combined that I spent in Liverpool. First trip was about 4 days, second trip was about 4 days, and I viewed the properties myself. So another question people have been asking is, how many times did I have to travel down to Liverpool before I found the property that I am buying? Like I mentioned earlier, I traveled to Liverpool twice. My first trip, I probably viewed about 7 properties. I basically liked only one, to be honest. And I put an offer on that one, but the process of putting an offer on a property, it's like you're competing with other buyers as well. So I didn't get that and I was bummed out, and I had to make another trip to Liverpool. This time around, I had about 4 properties that I could potentially put an offer on. So I took them based on my most preferred property to the list, and I started to put an offer on the property. So I put an offer on the first one that I really liked. I didn't get it. I put an offer on the second one, and that's the one that I am actually buying right now. The truth is, it may take you multiple trips down to the area where you are trying to buy a property before you can find a suitable one. Now, I don't mind paying a property sourcer as long as I trust them. And to be honest, I have no regrets using the people that I used originally, even though things didn't work out, because I did learn a lot on that journey, and that's how I like to see things. But there's so many property sources out there who can help you to buy properties in a country you're not living in another city you're not even familiar with. What you need to look out for is their knowledge of the area. You also owe it to yourself to do a bit of research in terms of what that area is like. There's so much information on the internet about, different markets and what it entails. If you're not able to go do the viewing, let's say you live abroad or you live in a different city and it's not convenient for you, totally, like, you can use a property sourcer to help you to just ease the stress of trying to, go and view. Also knowing fully well that you may go and view a property and put an offer on it, and then you may not get it, and then you have to repeat that. One of the top question people have been asking is, so how do you intend to manage this property when you buy it? And the truth is, there's so many options, right? There are property management companies that you can engage. Yes, you need to part with some money. Most property management companies will take about 10% of the rental income, but it's going to ease your stress, of having to manage the property yourself. Depending on the strategy that you are also using, you may not need a property manager. If you are doing like a single let where, you have long-term tenants, you may not necessarily need to have a property management in place. What you just need to do is make sure you have contacts of, say, a plumber, electrician, people who you trust that can help you fix things that are within what you as a landlord needs to fix. If a tenant calls you that, hey, something is not working. If you're doing things like serviced accommodation, there are ways where you can also automate how you manage the property, from using apps to using key safes to engaging people who can help you, open the door for your guests and welcome them. So there's so many options that you can explore. It's not impossible. Don't let the fear of how will I manage this property if I'm buying outside of the area that I'm staying hold you back from exploring and taking advantage of an opportunity to make money. So for me, I'm not afraid to obviously engage someone if I need to, or try to automate anything that I can automate to save money if I need to. So one other question people have been asking me is, how easy is it for you to buy an investment property as a foreigner or an immigrant? And here's the truth. I knew it was possible, right? I also was very aware of the fact that a lot of people are not going in the direction that I'm going. Most immigrants, when you see their videos of buying properties, it is usually a residential property that they're buying, right? Which is actually much easier to get if you're buying a residential property. But if you're buying an investment property, it is not impossible. If it adds an extra layer of difficulty to it when you're trying to buy in a limited liability company, especially here in the UK, as a first-time buyer and a first-time landlord. However, it's not impossible. Like I said, one of the good things that happened to me was, terminating the contract of the other people that I was working with and getting my own mortgage broker. The key is to make sure that you have people who understand your situation on your team, right? Your mortgage broker is on your team, your solicitor is on your team, your property sourcer is on your team. Someone may be able to source you a residential property, but they may know nothing about sourcing, say, a serviced accommodation or an HMO for you, right? They may have the knowledge, but they may not have the knowledge of the area that you're trying to invest in as well. So it's very important that you assemble your team very well, that you make sure that they can deal with your situation. A lot of the things that I learned along the journey was that there are other ways that I probably could have gotten financing other than going through the regular mortgage route that probably could have made my journey much easier. But obviously, if you don't know, you don't know, right? One of the things that kept me going was the fact that if people that are non-residents can actually buy properties in the UK, how much more me that I'm living here, right? every lender is going to have different criteria. You may not be able to go to a mainstream lender if you're an immigrant and you're trying to do the same thing that I'm trying to do. You may have to go through a specialist lender, which is the kind of lender that I went through. But for someone to say it's not possible, nah, I don't believe in that. Like I said, I have learned so many other ways that I probably could have been able to, jump this hoop much faster than I did. But one good thing is, there's always lessons to be learned. And the key, like I said, is making sure that your team understands you properly. If you're trying to get finance, make sure that whatever broker you're working with knows your situation, and they have a track record of solving for people who are in your situation. So last question is, what are the pitfalls to avoid? Like I mentioned earlier, you need to assemble your team properly. If you're choosing a property sourcer, you want to make sure that they understand your situation, they understand what you're trying to achieve with your investment, and they can help you source the kind of property that would fit your investment. They know the area. You also have a responsibility to yourself to do some research about the area online and see if the area fits what you want to do. Another thing is your budget. Obviously, like I mentioned earlier, places like London, right? Prices of properties are way more expensive. And even in terms of like capital growth, you see that places like Liverpool, Manchester probably have a higher capital growth than places like London. Yes, the price point is cheaper in terms of what you can use to buy a property, which is a good thing. Rental yield might be much lower. Everybody knows that rent in London is more expensive. But in terms of being able to get onto the property ladder, also make use of like different creative strategies in property investment, those areas are equally fantastic. So the other thing that you need to sort out is your financing, especially if you're trying to get a mortgage. The first thing is you want to make sure that even if you're using a property sourcer who is going to give you like an end-to-end package, like the people that I was going with, that you sort out the lending aspect by getting an approval in principle first before they go and start looking for properties for you. Your finance is what is going to determine whether or not you're able to buy. The second thing in terms of finance is the fact that you want to make sure that your bank statement is very tidy. One of the things that you need to pass by the time you're applying for your mortgage is anti-money laundering checks. So you want to make sure that the source of your money is not shady. You want to make sure that they can trace where your money has come from, even if it is a gift from, say, a relative or your parents or a friend. You want to make sure that they can track your funding. You also want to make sure that you streamline your bank statement in a way that it doesn't look like you're trying to hide something in your bank statement. So those are some of the things that I think would help you if you're trying to buy an investment property. So now to the good news and the thing that I wanted to share with you, something I've been working on, something I'm actually very passionate about because of my own experience trying to work with a property sourcer who was meant to relieve me of the stress of, buying a property outside of an area that I'm used to. I have decided to launch my own property sourcing company. It's called Five Homes. And basically, I have picked all the lessons from working with a property sourcer who couldn't solve my problem, and all the lessons that I've also learned along my journey of buying a property outside of the area that I'm living in. And also ultimately just not treating people like a transaction, especially because property investment is not something that anyone should take lightly. It is something that is capital intensive. It also requires a lot of regulation. and it can be a very stressful journey. And I've decided to launch Faiz Homes as a company that is going to hold your hands throughout the journey. So if you are busy, if you are an expert, if you are living outside of the UK and you want to invest in properties within the UK, please feel free to reach out to us at Faiz Homes. I'm going to put the email in the description box below, info@faizhomes.co.uk, and we can help you to go on this journey as smooth as possible. If you want our end-to-end service where we would source the property, we would link you up with our mortgage brokers, our solicitors, property managers, and everything that you need, including even managing like renovation to make sure that the property is ready for a tenant, or whatever sort of strategy that you intend to go with, then you can always reach out to us. For now, our focus is in areas like Liverpool, Manchester, and London. So basically, we'll go on all the viewings for you. We would help you analyze every property that we view in terms of what the area is like, what the yield is like, what it would take for you to get it rental ready. Anything you need in between is what we're going to help you with. So there you have it. I'm very excited about this new journey of launching this property sourcing company, and hopefully I can help anyone who's feeling overwhelmed about the process of trying to do exactly the same thing as I did on their journey to getting onto the property ladder as well. Anyways, I've come to the end of this video. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure you like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you next time. Bye.